Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and today we are talking about what is considered by many to be one of the, if not the worst battleship in the game, and that is the Tier 9 German battleship, the FDG. Now, the FDG was introduced all the way back in Update 5.10, so she's been in the game for quite some time, and has gone through several changes in her lifetime, and thankfully a couple of buffs here and there. So we're going to take a look at the FDG in today's World Warships, talk about how she performs, and of course discuss the changes and whether or not the ship is worth grinding up to in today's World Warships with all the wonderful things that we have going on at higher tier. Alright, so getting started by taking a quick look at her stats. So the FDG is, in simple terms, a bigger Bismarck with the way that she's laid out and with many of her characteristics, because of course it still is a German battleship in the main line, and she does have a lot going for her, especially in the way of armor. So the FDG has a nice giant 60mm icebreaker bow that then bleeds into a 150mm cheek. Her main armor belt is 300mm thick. Her upper armor belt is 145, and there is a 235mm slat in between those two. Stern armor has a partial wraparound icebreaker cheek that is 90mm thick. Her stern is 32mm, along with her stern deck being 32mm, and then her bow is also 32, with her bow deck being 32. However, she has a very large section on deck that goes from a 50mm section to an 80mm section in the middle, so that is quite nice. But then it does go back down to 50mm in the superstructure area. Take away her external armor, and her citadel is nice and hidden by this nice slab of turtle back. It is a little bit above the waterline, so if you are turning exceptionally hard over and get shot at just the right angle, you can citadel the ship from the side, although that is of course quite rare, and at range with plunging fire you will get chunked quite hard and potentially citadel there as well. And generally the armor scheme of the FDG and the German battleships, it's pretty chunky. You can chunk them pretty good if you have large caliber guns at range, but at close range this is one of the best armor schemes to have in game, because while you will get pretty chunky at close range, you won't get citadeled, so when you're brawling it is definitely a nice armor scheme to have. For hit points, she has 84,300 with 25% torpedo damage reduction. Her guns. So, you have a choice to make here on the FDG. You can run 16-inch guns. That's all you really have choice of. But you can run 406s or 420s. 420s are what I normally run with when I'm brawling, because they do have a little bit more damage than the 406s. The 420s do, with AP, 800 more damage per shell. Multiply that by 8 guns. That is potentially 16,000 more damage per salvo. And when you're in a brawling situation, DPM isn't that important, especially when you're doing the drive-by. You want to have the biggest knockout punch you can in that scenario. So if you're going for a build where you're planning on doing a lot of close-in combat and a lot of drive-bys, then that is what you want. However, you can run the 406s and get a pretty good pickup when it comes to DPM, or RPM, I guess I should say. You get a 3-second faster reload time with a 26-second base reload time versus a 29-second base reload time with the 420s. Then if you take the reload module in your 6 upgrade slot, you will now have a 22-second reload time on your 8 406mm guns, which is pretty darn good for Tier 9. Now, 406 isn't exactly large by Tier 9 standards, but it's not small either. Of course, we have the Iowa with 9 406mm guns and several other 16-inch gun battleships at Tier 9, and having a 22-second reload, it's pretty sweet. And it's still German AP. It has a very flat arc, and it packs one hell of a punch as well, even though there are 406s. So that's up to you. Again, if I want a brawling type of build, I go with the 420s. If I want to play more at range, I go with the 406s. Now, speaking about builds too, this is a battleship that you can run a couple different builds on it, and from what I've seen tonight, does pretty good either way, but we'll get More on that when we get through with her stats. So AA, don't worry about it. It's not going to help you. She has a maximum speed of 31.5 knots with the speed flag, a turning circle radius of 940 meters, and a ridership time of 19.5 seconds. Concealment with the module and without the commander build, that will get you down to 15.1. With the commander skill, again, that'll take it down about another 10%, so you'll be about 13 and change at that part. For her consumables, she gets the German Hydro Acoustic Search, good old 6-kilometer German Hydro that lasts for 120 seconds, reloads in 114 seconds. You get a catapult plane, fighter or spotter, and then you get a heal that regens 505 HP per second and is active for 30.8 seconds. And then a damage column that is active for 16.5 seconds with a 76-second reload. Alright, so FDG in today's meta. Well, like I was saying before I got ahead of myself, you can run a couple of different builds on this ship. And for what I've seen here tonight, despite me having absolutely terrible matches, they both work if you play them accordingly. So I tried out 2 different builds on my FDG tonight. I tried out the pure raw DPM build. I put the 406s on, I put the reload module in the 6th slot, I put my Preußen commander on the FDG, and I ran with that, and, I mean, it worked. For matches that were ending in, again, like 6-5 minutes, I was getting like 80,000 damage, 90,000 damage, again, in matches that are ending in 5 minutes. That's certainly not bad, especially, again, in today's World of Warships, and keep in mind, too, most of this time I'm firing at 16, 17 kilometers, and the game doesn't really have time to get much closer than that. I think I had 1 or 2 matches with the main gun build on the FDG where we actually got within like 15 kilometers of each other. Now, one of the frustrating things is that you're going to be overpinning ships a lot. Again, it's German AP, it's hard-hitting, flat shell arcs, lends itself to overpinning cruisers, which can be very frustrating, but you do have a 22-second reload time with that commander build and module build on the FDG that does kind of make up for that. So sure, you're overpinning, but you're throwing a lot of shells downrange in a very quick time, so that kind of makes up for it. And when you do run into something that you can actually bite into, like a heavy cruiser that's angled properly, or another battleship, sure, the guns are plenty accurate enough to actually hit them. They were buffed a while ago with the American dispersion ellipse. So now these German guns share that same dispersion ellipse with the Americans, which means that there's a whole lot less of, if you've played the German battleships, a few years ago, of where you fire a target that's 4 kilometers away from you, and somehow the shells manage to like cross each other. Like the shell from the right barrel goes all the way to the left, and the shell from the left barrel goes all the way to the right, and everyone misses the ship. There's a whole lot less of that going on now, thank the Lord God Almighty. So that's less frustrating. And plus, she did get a reload buff where she has this, 26-second base reload on the 406s and 29-second base reload on the 420s. So that's much better now as well. So what about the good old-fashioned secondary I want to brawl and punch things in the face build? Well, as you can see in the first match of this video, maybe the only match depending upon how long this video goes, it still works just fine, and this is without IFHE. I didn't want to respec Lucian's just to have IFHE for these like 4 or 5 games I was planning on playing with him in FDG. So without IFHE and having the exact same secondary suite as the Bismarck, it still puts in work. You can get it out to 12 kilometers though, instead of the 11.3 of the Bismarck. And yes, she has the exact same secondary suite as the Bismarck. She has 16 105s and then 12 150s. Now the 105s, if you do want them to get past 32, you do have to spec into IFHE, which will get you past the 32mm threshold, and you'll be doing a lot more consistent damage through pins. With my Lucian's build, I currently have him spec'd out for no IFHE because I like to run him on GK, and GK has a bunch of glorious 128s, so that's why I don't have IFHE on him right now. I have a separate command with IFHE that I run on my German battle cruisers because those all have, a crap ton of 105s on them, so that's why that's why my Lucius doesn't have IFHE on him at the moment. So, again, even without IFHE, the secondaries were absolutely vomiting shells out everywhere, starting plenty of fires. That is one thing that you get without building into IFHE. You do maintain your fire chance, so if you have a good roll of the dice, you'll be setting plenty of fires with the amount of shells that you are getting out of this ship. Now, the big thing about the brawling build is that this doesn't happen every match, of course. Especially with the matches I was having tonight. Usually, even in the more stagnant matches, if they last long enough, you'll eventually get into secondary range. That's what I normally say when I'm giving out advice on playing German battleships. You gotta survive until you can push in at the end and get within secondary range and just absolutely melt stuff with your secondaries, as they've already, eaten so much damage during the match. They're probably at least half health by this point. So you move in there with your machine gun secondaries and finish them off and, well, do well for yourself. But now matches don't really get to that point anymore, unfortunately. So do take that and keep that in mind when you're considering what to put on your FDG. Now, the main battery build is a lot more viable in today's World of Warships, and like I was saying, I was getting 80,000 damage in 5 or 6 minutes with the GK, with the 406s, and not the 420s, which is something that was really odd to me because I've never really put the 406s on the GK. I'm sorry, on the FDG, except when I grinded through her the first time, way back when she was Terabad. So I can imagine if those matches had actually gone for, like 10-15 minutes, I'd probably be sitting quite comfortably at 150,000 damage by the end of the match, with my aiming at long range, which is terrible. Now, range is another thing that's kind of gimps the ship. She does have a 20-kilometer range, and if you want to get the good reload time, you got to put the reload mod in the 6 slot and not the range mod. But she does get the spotter plane, so you can run that and get her shells out a little bit further. But granted, even with the American Battleship dispersion formula, her shells are still going to be a little squirrely at that range. But again, having the ability to get out to that range with the spotting plane is, I think, the way to go. I want to put the range mod on, get that quick reload time on those 406s, and start spewing out shells every 22 seconds. So, in terms of today's game, she's actually, in my opinion, better equipped to deal with this meta than she was with the old meta back in the day when she was released. Thanks to those buffs, those reload buffs, the dispersion ellipse buff, and then just the way that the meta is at higher tier, she does do quite well. Now, am I saying she's a king of long-range sniping? No, it's more of like a very, 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 very large heavy cruiser with good AP. And that's how I would play her. Stay on the move, keep your guns firing. Obviously, don't just go unga bunga in there. And yeah, I would definitely run a main battery build on my FDG if I could only run one build, because as nice as the secondary build is, and as much as I love to brawl, it just doesn't happen enough to build out a commander with that many points invested in a very specific build that you're only going to be able to take advantage of every, well, like I had tonight, every 9 games. And that's the unfortunate truth of it. Is it worth grinding through the FDG? I would say absolutely, because Preußen's around the corner. And Preußen is much better at this than the FDG is. With those 8 18-inch guns, with that quick reload time, the German AP and German AP shell ballistics and all that jazz, it's a really sweet ship. So I wouldn't say she's the worst battleship in the game. She's, again, not going to win any best battleship top 5 videos or anything like that. But she's a really solid ship, and if you play her properly and play her right, and just, I know those of you out there that are the guys that love brawling, it's sad that we have to accept that this is what's working right now. But you can still brawl in her. It's not going to be very often, but you can still do it. And she's still quite good at it. So you do have that to fall back on with the FDG. So guys, let me know what you guys think about the FDG in the comments down below. Hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 40,000 subs. We're getting very close to that goal. We are, I believe, under 150 away as of me recording this. That is awesome, guys. I will be live streaming tonight here and on Twitch, so make sure to come out for that as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you have a wonderful Friday. Have a wonderful weekend. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.